This is Sybert signing into Red Alert 3 on the map Fire Island, and spawning in the southern corner, our yellow allied player representing teammates. This is Vindies. And in the top right corner, our blue allied player. That's right, it's an AVA. This is Andrey. Andrey 96, who I believe is a recent teammates joiner. Also, one of those, up-and-coming allied players, not quite near the top. However, this is from For the Win number 31. If you couldn't tell from the title, this is the Winners Bracket Finals, and it is going to be a best of 5, which means we're already... Wow. Vindies actually gets all the way in there. Of course, with this version of Fire Island, you can't actually wall in completely that spot. But the point being, a fair amount of matches have already been played. This was a double elimination event, lots of games to be going through, and that actually leads us to our next point, because Andrey, our blue allied player, knocked Yui out of the Winners Bracket semifinals. Quite odd to see someone like Andrey defeat Yui 2-0. Now, I didn't quite see those games. I didn't see them at all. And they very well could have just been like super hardcore cheese by Andrey, in which case, not quite the same as playing out like a long macro game, but Yui still a solid allied player. No doubt very rusty coming into this event, but no doubt still a very solid allied player. So that is a bit of a feat. And then on the other side of the bracket, we did have Vindies, who is no stranger to tournaments and doing relatively well. Sometimes he makes it to the finals. He hasn't actually won that many Premier 1v1 events, but he has made a name for himself regardless, making it to the finals of several recently. And in this case, he took down Kimi no Uji in the Winners Bracket semifinals 2-1 to advance here. Before that, he ended up taking out Zocker, who is a tournament champion, 2-0 in the Winners Bracket quarterfinals. So Vindies tearing through the bracket overall, and now that brings us to the Winners Bracket Finals, where both of these guys killed the two guys who were in the finals and gave us a fantastic show at the 2014 Christmas tournament. That double elimination event, double best of 7 for the grand finals. At any rate, it was double ref into the airfield, and no riptides for Vindies. He does love getting his riptides. Instead, in this particular case, he decided to just go straight infantry. A couple of javelin troopers getting sniped out of that barracks by the Vindicator is actually quite nice. Does help make up for the cost of the Vindicator by quite a bit. And of course, eliminating those javelin troopers just makes it that much more annoying for Andrey if he wants to go for any sort of Riptide Javelin Trooper combo, anything like that, or even, start mixing them in with IFVs to help deal with the aircraft. Eliminating anti-air as an allied player is pretty much always very important, and unless you're like Zlex or a couple of other guys that go like heavy vehicle-based compositions, or you're Wolf the Wolf and you're just going like PK spam the whole game long, which he occasionally does, not very often. At any rate, 4th Refinery going to be coming up for Andrey. As you can see right there, we'll be taking a bit of a bombing from that Vindicator. Vindies is like, hey, I see that you've got that there. And of course, this being Vindies, we would expect to be seeing him go Tier 2 relatively soon. He hasn't done it quite yet. He may be researching right now, but he's not quite there yet. We do expect to see Andrey going for Tier 2, or excuse me, Vindies going for Tier 2, going for cryocopters and starting to mix them into his composition. Andrey, on the other hand, haven't really casted that many high-level games of Andrey. For now, he's playing very macro-oriented. He did grab the oil derrick earlier on, but since then, he's just been focused really heavily on building a lot of infantry and getting up to those 4 refineries. Now, he goes up to 4 refinery on he's actually on 3 barracks. He kept around his initial 2, so he's going to have pretty good production, and of course, he can always drop additional barracks with this MCV in the base of his opponent. Going for Riptides is going to be a good choice, but it's still just Tier 1 for Vindies. And of course, Vindies does have some pretty nice control. Okay, yeah, he's only Tier 1, so he can't actually get spies, so I don't need to really check for them. But knowing it's Vindies, that's something you always have to worry about. And of course, splash damage from the multi-gunner IFV turret is pretty darn good. couple of Riptides are now out with the MCV packing up. Unfortunately, Vindies doesn't have quite the power necessary to keep everything online. Javelin Troopers laser locking down that 4th refinery. Vindies will lose it in very short fashion, and he could control a little bit better with his Peacekeepers, but he's more worried about his more damage-dealing units and trying to control his own MCV against the infantry of his opponent. The laser lock just cannot actually happen, although this guy certainly will get a laser lock and be able to get some nice DPS out on that MCV, as it does barely go out of range and continue to push down the center, although maybe even 3 Riptides could be getting crushed here. One of them gets laser locked as well, just to make sure, and Vindies is losing a huge amount of infantry. A couple more Peacekeepers in the north going to be closing in for Andrey, but now the Riptide numbers are starting to offset the number of Peacekeepers that have gone down. The real worry for actually both of these guys is keeping alive their MCVs. Of course, MCVs are very slow, and once they're in that heavy damage mode, they're basically impossible to actually crush anything unless you're playing against someone who just is not paying any attention at all. Most likely some Peacekeepers jumping inside of these Riptides. One of them gets eliminated immediately, and it looks like an engineer gets sniped as well. If this MCV survives, that's actually a pretty big deal for Vindies, but no, it will not. A nice snipe there by Andrey, and no actual Peacekeepers, I guess, inside of those Riptides. One of them does end up going down, although that may have had some Peacekeepers in it. I can never actually remember if the units fly out from the Riptide or not to indicate that they were in there. And actually, both MCVs going down, which will leave Andrey in a slightly more advantageous position if he's able to deal with this army, just because he'll already have that 4th refinery up and going. But again, if he can't deal with this army, then having the extra resources doesn't do anything. And then the bad thing for both of these guys is oh no, he actually does have an Ilvyard. Vindies could potentially come out of this with an MCV and eventually get himself back into, having a build queue. But for now, Andrey has to make do with, for the rest of the game, only infantry, because, yep, those 2 racks are his only production facilities, and now going up against Riptides is going to be extremely difficult. Peacekeepers and Riptides going to be closing in on this clump of mostly Javelin Troopers, actually all Javelin Troopers, which means that if they get some shots off, they'll be pretty good at killing Riptides, but very, very bad, of course, at actually killing off Peacekeepers. Goodbye, Riptide, as the refinery goes down, and this airfield will probably not fall. There we go. Potentially, if those guys would have been able to laser lock for like 1 second, all 5 of them or 4 of them, if they would have been able to get 1 second of laser lock, then the DPS from the Riptides and Peacekeepers probably wouldn't have been enough to kill off all of the Javelin Troopers before they finished off that refinery. But since none of them actually got the laser lock off before that, easy pickings for Vindies to clean up just that group of Javelin Troopers. There's the GG. Andrey has been defeated and losing pretty much everything that he had there. His entire standing army getting completely slaughtered by Vindies. And that's game number 1, which almost went Andrey's way. However, Vindies, with the experience and, of course, actually going for something that isn't infantry. Yeah, Andrey had a superior economy for the majority of that game. Not a, huge advantage, just because he wasn't able to sit on that economy advantage for very long, but Vindies is the one who actually had stuff that wasn't just infantry. And as it turns out, having aircraft and Riptides is pretty darn good. And look at that, even over that short of a game, with the double oil derrick, his income wasn't actually very far behind for Vindies, so extra refinery not really paying off in any way that you look at it. Andrey down 0-1 against his teammate, but can he mount the comeback? Is going to need to do it in game number 2. Which takes us to Cabana Republic, and on the left side, our yellow allied player, this is Vindies. Representing teammates, looking for another championship, but looking for his first finals, potentially ever, or at least his first finals in a while, and definitely his first championship. On the right side, our blue allied player, mates Andrey. Double racks once again. Now, occasionally, we'll see a guy go double racks super hardcore, like MCV sell all in. I don't know that I've actually seen that in a tournament match, but that would be something pretty crazy to see. The problem going up against a guy like Vindies, if you're Andrey, is, if you do a super hardcore cheese like that really depends on, good unit control, Vindies probably has better unit control than you, and he'll probably be able to identify what you're doing rather easily, and then deal with it 2 dogs going to be coming in. If they would have timed that a little bit better, one of them may have been able to get a roar off and actually lock down this Peacekeeper and Engineer. However, or maybe just like waited until the Peacekeeper was a little bit split off from that Engineer. However, Andrey able to clean up those 2 dogs very easily. No problemo. Going to be getting out his refineries as well. Nothing too crazy as far as we're not seeing, you know, like one refinery sort of play. Again, Yui is not playing in the series, so we wouldn't necessarily expect to see that. We may very well... Whoa, these Javelin Troopers are going to be getting killed off. One of them might be able to... Nope, they've already cleaned up the buildings, so they can't actually jump inside of those buildings and at least force some sort of exchange. What I would expect to see out of course, Vindies is going to be that Riptide. Ordinarily, when he clumps up, you know, Javelin Troopers, Engineers, and Peacekeepers back in his base, it's almost always going to be looking for at least 1, sometimes 2 Riptides. Of course, that will give him the extra oil derrick, and grabbing that is, of course, well, actually, if Vindies is able to hold on to it, it will be very nice, denying the income to your opponent, but of course, getting that extra bit of money as well. Airfield down for Andrey. Not yet for Vindies. He's pieced out with his MCV. I'm not actually sure. I don't see the dot on the mini-map. No, it's right there. It's the larger dot that is not where I was looking, as he's going to be going for his 3rd refinery out on the water. Lots of Allies players do like to go there rather than trying to take the further away. Ooh, getting 2 Vindicators for free. Ha! At least Andrey gets both of the oil derricks. I mean, yeah, he didn't actually get both of the oil derricks just straight up, so he didn't get the cashback bounty. And now Vindies is going to just grab that Engineer, or grab that oil derrick back, and the Engineer won't be able to be sniped or anything like that. Yeah, losing those 2 Vindicators is a pretty big deal. Ordinarily, he'd be able to run in here, you know, snipe down some of these Riptides potentially, but no, with just 1 Vindicator, he's going to have a hard time actually picking off those Riptides. And of course, if they jump out with some Javelin Troopers, he may be losing the Vindicator again. A 3rd one does go down, 3,600 credits, which could have been invested into infrastructure, potentially another refinery, or just a lot more units, is now completely dead for almost no value. With the Peacekeepers going down, this MCV is going to be sitting pretty darn exposed against whatever Javelin Troopers survived the last couple of engagements. And even with a multi-gunner turret... okay, well, if Vindies would have chose to engage here, he would have been able to potentially deal with that a lot easier. Oh, jumps out with the Javelin Troopers. Will be getting a couple of more shots off. May actually be able to finish off that Vindicator. Yes, he will indeed. Finishes off the Vindicator pretty easy peasy. And now Peacekeeper's going to be moving in for Andrey. Drops down an additional airfield. I don't know how I feel about that, considering he is into that low power mode. And going to be locking down that MCV's very dangerous cannons with that hydrofoil. Always a good thing to do, but more importantly, locking down the actual multi-gunner turret and not allowing it to do anything, as an assault destroyer is going to be joining the fray for Vindies. And now Andrey has to deal with an assault destroyer, which of course can switch back over to that primary gun mode and deal with the airfield rather easily. 2 Javelin Troopers going to... Oh, and one of those Vindicators can't even do anything until it steps outside of the range of that hydrofoil. 2 Javelin Troopers not on laser lock mode, with the Riptides dealing with the Peacekeepers. Very easy hold here for Vindies, and that's the GG. There is nothing left for Andrey. And there he goes, as Vindies takes the 2nd map pretty darn handily. Big push out from Andrey. Didn't really have that many units to support it. He had a couple of Peacekeepers, but he didn't really have any meat in his army. Ordinarily, that support would have been provided by the Vindicators. But when you lose your first 3 off the bat without hardly doing anything, and your opponent still has like a bunch of Javelin Troopers, didn't get impeded in his tech, so he was still able to get up that 3rd refinery, get the naval yard, get out a hydrofoil, tech up to tier 2, get out assault destroyers. When you add all of those things up for Vindies, and the fact that Andrey lost those units early on, not a good situation to be in, but that takes Vindies into a match point advantage. Can Andrey survive, bring it back, and start the comeback? It has to happen here, otherwise we'll see the 3-0 by Vindies, the all-kill, but let's jump into game number 3, which takes us to Snowplow, and, as I said, the match point for this series. Will it be a 3-0 clean sweep? Well, it depends in large part on the performance of this guy in the north. Of course, Snowplow, traditionally an Allied favor map, but when it's a mirror matchup, sometimes it doesn't matter. This is Andrey, representing teammates and his teammate in the south, making this a team kill. The yellow, he is commanding this series. This is Vindies. He drops the power plant, drops the double racks, because again, it's a Snowplow AVA. They're gonna meet in the middle. They're gonna high five each other. They're gonna be best friends. That's what I'm predicting. Best friends. Now, I believe these rocks actually either mess up pathing or they block stuff. I don't actually remember what the rocks do. Maybe they block vehicles or something, because I remember there's some sort of like hubbub or, you know, uproar about those rocks. And by uproar, I mean it was like the very most mild uproar possible. So maybe that'll be advantageous for Vindies, considering he did spawn in that southern position. Oil derricks being grabbed by both parties. A little bit later for Andrey, just a little bit slower overall. And a double refinery coming down for both of these guys. As you can see, it's very important to note that it's not going to be like a one refinery, again, turret push all in, something like that. The next structure coming down is going to be the power plant, but it's not an immediate pack-up of the MCV heading over towards the water, a potential third refinery location, or a turret push. It is indeed going to be the immediate queuing of an additional structure. Now, Andrey drops down those power plants. Those are actually both within range of Javelin Troopers, so keeping them out on the water is not, you know, necessarily as protective as it is on something like Fire Island, where you can put the power plants pretty far out there and actually have them not be shot up by Javelin Troopers. In this case, if Vindies gets a chance, he can take out those power plants easy peasy. MCV right in the middle of the map doesn't quite start an immediate multi-gunner turret, but relatively quickly, and Vindies is going to be several seconds behind if it turns into a multi-gunner turret war, which it very well likely will. Getting out 2 Vindicators is very, very nice, because once it turns into a multi-gunner turret war, killing off those multi-gunner turrets extremely quickly, i.e. 2 Vindicators, is very important, and of course not donating away those Vindicators is also very important, so that you actually have 2 to quickly snipe down your opponent's defensive structures. Could drop the bombs and then let the Peacekeepers finish it off, though, as goodbye multi-gunner turret, but barely does clean up only 2 Peacekeepers, so actually that was not as bad as it could have been for Vindies. Third refinery going to be coming down. The economic focus for Andrey hasn't been working out in the previous game. However, if he just goes for the third refinery and then keeps a healthy number of Peacekeepers up here and then starts going either for like a naval yard, potentially airfield, tier 2 for cryocopters. Oh, is he going to splash these power plants down? He actually could. If he focus fires right in the middle of those power plants, then he totally could. And goodbye. That's the lesson, kids. If you place your buildings right next to each other against an allied player and they spot it, and their name is Vindies or any good allied player, they'll be like, oh, wait a second, I can just splash down both of these buildings at the same time. You focus fire the ground in between them and easy peasy. I don't know that you could do it with those. Those are probably a little bit too far apart, but a bit of a crucial mistake there for Andrey. And again, 1,600 credits that he didn't want to have to necessarily drop. A nice surround on that multi-gunner turret. Drops it relatively quickly. Vindicator's going to be coming in, getting another bombing run, able to do some nice damage to that MCV. And again, if this comes down to a very close turret war, taking that extra bit of damage on the MCV could be a pretty big deal. Oh, wow, I didn't even realize this, but yeah, Vindies able to snipe down that refinery, able to get down a multi-gunner turret in that position, going to be denying any real naval yard support, and with no aircraft, with no aircraft, then it's going to be a bit difficult for Andrey to really like push forward and do some serious damage. A multi-gunner turret gets deployed pretty darn close to the front line, forcing Andrey to move his MCV ever further back, and now garrisoning up that multi-gunner turret with a Peacekeeper, going to be doing some nice splash damage. It's not exactly a one-man army against this many Peacekeepers when they get a sick concave like that, but it is very much a powerhouse structure. MCV going to be moving on forward, and well, nice pullback of those Peacekeepers. The split, not exactly what he wants, but multi-gunner turret is going to be helping out a little bit there against the MCV. It gets sniped down, and this is a complete surround, but as you can see, the APM is just not enough for Andrey as he switches all of his Peacekeepers to that shield mode, and then suddenly when everything is in riot shield mode, oh no, he still clicked on the MCV! He still clicked on the MCV, and he loses everything! Oh! Oh, that was like 10 seconds where he just threw any chance of taking that game completely away. Wow, that was some mistakes. Wow. Ha ha. He's just like, I don't really want to kill this MCV. I'm going to take all my Peacekeepers and put them all into shield mode. I want to make sure none of them are doing any damage. And then, when he just clicked on that MCV, at that point, it was most likely, it was like 95% all the way over. But still, there's like that 5% chance where it's like somehow with 2 racks, Andrey totally makes a comeback. But yeah, when you just click onto that MCV and then just file all of your Peacekeepers into the waiting jaws of Vindies, it literally becomes impossible at that point. But as I said, the writing was probably already on the wall, and a guy like Andrey probably already knew that. He was like, oh well, I played well in the other games. Not so much those last, 30 seconds, but he did put up a good show going toe-to-toe in places with Vindies. Thinking back to game number 1, thinking back to Fire Island, not so much Cabana Republic, but thinking back to Fire Island, some good choices. And, yeah, not the best AVA we've ever seen, but Andrey, again, this is a guy who maybe 6 months ago would have been nowhere near this position, and in the last couple of months, he's certainly come a bit into his own as far as actually competing at that higher level. Now, obviously, he's not there quite yet, but hopefully he will come back, and then soon, we may have another Vindies story on our hand. You guys may remember when Vindies was, like, actually not very good at Red Alert 3, and he didn't actually win anything, and now he's a guy who's actually pretty consistently at the top of tournaments, and he's putting out really good games. Even if maybe not every single good player shows up to the tournament, he's still in between tournaments putting out some good games. You can catch replays of him, and yeah, he is a very good player. Anyways, I've gone on quite long enough. The grand finals are going to be coming up after this because the losers bracket finals had a bit of a mix-up, and yeah, there were some problems with it, and so one of the players ended up forfeiting. As such, we don't have a losers bracket finals, and yeah, that will do it. So grand finals is going to be coming up next. Stay tuned to my channel for that. Thank you all very much for watching, and this is Sybert signing out.